Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writing Quest. My name is Brennan Pugh. Today we have NJ Alexander with us. He's the author of Bound. And welcome to the show. Glad to have you on.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Really happy to be here, and I'm thrilled to be here too.
Yeah, for sure. So why don't you start off by just telling us who you are, how you got started, and how we ended up with Fogbound.
Man, you might be in for a longer answer than you were expecting for this
Perfect.
one. So again, my name is NJ Alexander. I'm also go by Nick, refer to me as either one. And Fogbound is an epic fantasy novel, and it stars a school teacher who is under the unfortunate circumstance of being under mind control from a long-dead legendary hero, and is now forced off to war, where he will do battle for both his homeland and his own mind. How this got started, Fogbound was not like this many, many years ago. I got my start on this very same book around 2011-ish is when I would say I really first started this. It was an entirely different book. And I, unfortunately, fell victim to a vanity press when I was about 18, 19 years old, and published the original version of Fogbound, which looked nothing like this.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, me being 19 and me falling victim to a vanity press, it was not good. I still have some old copies of that book lying around. Fogbound is actually me taking that book, unpublishing it, and ripping it to shreds, essentially. The bones are still kind of there from that very first book I wrote when I was young. I've added a lot to it. For some specifics, the original book was 78,000 words. I deleted about 40,000 of them and wrote it up to about 115,000. And that is the Fogbound we have today. It came out in 2023 as sort of a relaunch. I called it my re-debut at the time. Technically not my debut, I guess, but I did it again. So we called it the re-debut. And, best part about it is I finally have a book that I'm very proud to say that my name is on. That first book, the first time I did it, I've gone back and read some parts, especially when I was doing the heavy editing, right? And I was like, man, how the hell did I put my name on this? How did I put this out? So I'm just happy to have this book here. Is it a perfect book by any means? I mean, is any book really? But it's, it's great. It's my debut, and I love it to pieces.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. So I definitely want to get to Fogbound and stuff, but I do want to ask you about, because I think that's something I've never really explored before, the vanity press thing. How did that happen? And then I guess, do you have any advice for people, indie authors out there working with that?
Yeah. So first I'll say I'm very open about my experiences back when I was a teenager. So if any indie author has either A, fallen victim to a vanity press, or B, is like being hounded by vanity presses, doesn't know what to do, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to answer. I've had a few indie authors actually reach out to me about this over the course of a couple of years as I've told the story on podcasts and whatnot. So way back when, 2010, 2011, 2012, indie self-publishing scene there wasn't as much information about it as there is now.
Sure.
Right? And well, I say that I also could be wrong, and I was just a dumb kid. Either one of those could be true. But I do think it's easier to find good information now about reputable presses, about whether it's a small press or how to go about it yourself, like through self-publishing. So what happened was I was really just researching the publishing process. I had written the first draft of what is now Fogbound, that horrible book that I published when I was 18, 19. And I thought, okay, so I wrote the rough draft. How do I go about publishing this thing? I was doing some Googling. I filled out, I have some memory of filling out a form. It wasn't on the Vanity Press's website. It was some web form somewhere. And a few weeks later, I was contacted by the Vanity Press Ex Libris. They're quite popular. If you're pretty well versed in the publishing industry, you may have heard of them. They're a very well-known vanity press. They contacted me and said, hey, we'll edit your book. We'll give you a cover. We'll market it for you. put it on Amazon, give you a Library of Congress number, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, this sounds awesome. This sounds amazing. And so I signed a contract with them to publish the book. And if anyone doesn't know, a vanity press charges money to publish. So I paid them money. I don't remember what it was anymore. It wasn't cheap, I'll tell you that much. It was probably in the realm of $1,500 to do all that. Which you might be thinking to yourself, that sounds pretty cheap because, getting cover art, getting editing done, it's going to cost you about the same amount if you were to hire freelancers to do it, maybe even a little bit more. But let me tell you, the edit to that first book, it sucked. Maybe back then I thought it was good, but I read it when I was redoing it to rewrite Fogbound. I'm like, what the hell did they even do? Did they even edit this? What is going? So it's really just a scam. But me being dumb and me being very excited about having a book out, for what it's worth, the book did come out. It was on Amazon. They sent me like 100 complimentary copies of it. I had physical copies of a book, including hardcovers, and it was pretty cool to see my name on something. It was only when I got a little older, started writing more books, like the sequel to that book and then the book after it, that I really started to realize maybe I made a mistake signing a contract. Because I should say I signed the contract for 3 of them. So I'm like, maybe I made a mistake here. So the funny part of it, the easiest part was canceling the contract with them is super simple. They already got my money. They didn't give a crap about what I did. I just sent them an email and said, hey, can you unpublish this? I'd like just take it offline. They said, yep, here you go. And here's all the materials we did for you. I was like, okay,
done.
Yep, all set. I was like, okay, well, that was pretty easy. I thought it would be some long drawn out process because everything with them was long and drawn out. Also, I should say too, my book was really expensive. Like it was, it was 78,000 words, probably like 300 pages or something. And the paperback was close to $20 and I couldn't change that. I'm like, that just seemed really expensive to me. And now, of course, I know more about it. Yeah, that's really freaking expensive. So that was another part too, that I did not know up front how much the book would cost and they would not change the price. So that's another particularly bad part of it. But anyway, so I got out of the contract in 2020 or maybe late 2019. And that's when I really started the rewrite process in earnest. They gave me full permission to use the cover art that they had made for me and everything like that. But then I said, you know what? I think I need a clean break. I'm going to retitle the book, give myself a new pen name, and just start from scratch. So that's basically what I did. I didn't use anything they sent me except for my whatever draft it was they edited. And just used that to make an entirely new book and did everything else from scratch.
Well, it's great that you're talking about it because it's a cautionary tale for sure of, there's always people out there that are willing to take advantage of stuff. And so, that's just crazy.
I mean, today it's a lot. I think it's a lot harder to fall victim to a vanity press because of all the information out there. And, I'll leave it at that. It's a lot harder to fall for one. My rule of thumb is if a publisher wants to charge you money to publish the book, run. You can pay freelancers to do this stuff for you. One, it's more rewarding. You help out the indie community by hiring a freelance artist, freelance editor, all that. Of course, you have to pick and choose carefully when you do that, but it's more rewarding and it benefits the community more if you just hire a freelancer versus doing what 19-year-old NJ, not NJ Alexander at that point, but what 19-year-old me did.
No, it's it's so interesting that I would agree with you that there's definitely, I think it's easier to self-publish now and there is more information. So, while you may have been a kid, I do think it's still easier now for sure. And I think it's there's so many more people doing it that there's a lot more people to ask.
Yes, that's 100% true. And, use that experience as like I like to help people. Especially like young writers who are just starting, maybe they want to write a book, maybe they've written a book and they need help. I don't know. Sure, it cost me a lot of money back then. And maybe it was a mistake, but it's a learning experience. And I try to use my platform to caution people about it too.
So what made you want to kind of rewrite this book? As like, I could see a lot of people, they have a bad experience and they're just
Mhm.
like, I don't want to, I'm just going to do something totally different. What made you want to rewrite it and then re-release it?
Yeah. So first part is I never finished the series back then.
Hmm.
So there's going to be 4 books eventually in this series, and I had only written 3 of them. I had taken a pretty long hiatus from writing. I had graduated college, I was getting a job, bought a home, a condo, technically. Just life kind of gets in the way, right? So I
Hmm.
hadn't written anything for like 5 or so years. So I just never finished the series. And honestly, it's a pretty simple answer. I is my first one, and I just love it.
Hmm.
You know, I love the story. I love the characters that I created, and I love the world. Obviously, it got a pretty major revamp
Hmm.
when I rewrote it. All the characters changed names too. Some place names changed, all that sort of stuff. But the bare bones of the world and the story remain the same.
Hmm.
And I just, I said, you know what? I need to finish this. Both for me to feel a sense of completion and because I feel like this sounds so weird to say. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to these fictional characters that I created to
Yeah.
not finish their story.
Yeah.
And
No, that
that's
makes
really the
sense.
reason. Yeah, that's really about it. So I was hoping to have more of them out by now. It's 2024. I started rewriting it in 2020,
Hmm.
and there's only one of them is out. I was hoping to be a little bit further along, but hey, life
Yeah.
happens.
Life does happen. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
So do you kind of getting into the process of rewriting? So
yeah.
did you kind of replot it first? Did you outline it, or did you just kind of go into like how did you go about the rewriting and to get to where it is today?
That's a great question. So I'm a meticulous plotter and outliner, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Some of my outlines are like longer than a lot of short stories.
Mm.
Like I'll do like 5 to the last book I wrote was probably almost a 10,000 word outline of what I wanted to see happen.
Hmm.
So essentially, I outlined what I wanted the new book to be. Because one of the major components of it is actually, you know what? Before I get into that, I do want to mention one thing before the rewrite.
Hmm.
Initially, my quote unquote rewrite was just fix up the grammar, make the sentences sound a bit better, but otherwise leave everything the same. And then my initial plan was I was actually going to query it, like try to get traditionally published.
Hmm.
That was dashed pretty quickly because I was reading things about like never query a previously self-published book, all that sort of stuff. So I posted to the Facebook group called Subbit Club. People listening to this podcast, writers may have heard of it. It's fairly popular with people who are trying to be traditionally published. They are query letter, all that sort of thing, critique group.
Yeah.
I posted a draft of my letter in there for critique because I wanted to query agents. I wish I remembered this person's name because it's the best advice I ever got.
Hmm.
She commented on my post and she said, "Your writing is beautiful." I'm like, "Oh, gee, thanks." But I think your main character lacks agency. They feel like they're a leaf in the wind, going wherever the wind takes them without any motivation of their own. And I
Hmm.
went, huh, that's a really good point. And I was reading through the chapters, I was reading through the book, and I was like, damn, just from my query letter, she's right. My main character lacks agency. My main character lacks motivation. He is really just being told to do things, and he says, sir, yes, sir, and does them. So I said to myself, this is going to need a more substantial rewrite than just make the current book grammatically better.
Right.
So I ended up writing most of these new, I added about 30,000 words to the original word count. Most of that came from an entirely new section at the beginning of the book that is more revolved around the main character, his journey, and why he's doing what he does.
Hmm.
That's where the whole possession aspect came from as well.
Yeah.
So that's how I molded in there. Then once I had that, I plotted the rest of the book from it. And, I give my 19-year-old self some credit because I was like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know what? The plot structure of this book is actually not bad. The writing kind of sucks, but the plot structure was there. He had something going.
The bones were there.
The bones were there. There was something good about it that could be saved with just more experience, more expertise, and better character work. And I'm like, okay, I can work with this. So I plotted out that first part, plotted out the rest of the book, and then I got to chopping words and rewriting.
Yeah.
It took me a solid month and a half to do it. And that was, they say kill your darlings, right? A lot of darlings were killed.
Right.
During that month. There was just a lot going
slashing and burning.
Yeah. I did save all of it, not that I'll ever use it again, but I save it as sort of, this is where I was and look where I am now kind of thing.
Well, there may be a nugget of something in there eventually to,
And you know what? There is.
Yeah.
The last line of the book is the last line of the book I wrote when I was 19.
Yeah. Nice.
And you know what? It's not there because it's a mental sick. No, it's actually pretty good. I'm not going to say it, obviously. It's a spoiler. But I said, you know what? If I'm going to keep any lines from this original book, this is the one I'm going to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you talked about, or that person said that in that comment about agency with the character. I remember the very first draft I ever did of the book that I'm working on. I remember handing it to my brother who he writes, and we kind of work on stuff together. And he basically said the same thing. He goes, this is pretty good. You got some cool stuff in here. He goes, but like, what's the point of the main character? I said, what do you mean?
What are you talking about?
And he's like, well, like the character doesn't, like, there's no reason for the character to be there. Like stuff's just happening to him.
Yep.
And they're just responding and there, but there's not actually a point to them. And I think that's definitely a young writer. When you first write something, you're just kind of like exploring and you're like, I don't know why this character is doing anything, but
they're just here.
They're just there.
But you know what though? That's hard, right? Agency is hard. Giving proper motivation to a character, even the main character, maybe it's the villain, any character in your work, that's hard to do. That's a common complaint of, works you'll see even by famous writers, TV shows, movies. I mean, you'll see it everywhere. It's very hard to make a compelling case for a main character or a villain or anything like that. And I think that's a skill a lot of writers have to give themselves credit for. If you gave your character motivation, if you made a believable quest or whatever they have to do, I'd say that deserves some kudos because people don't talk about it really, but that's not easy.
Yeah. Why do you think it's not easy? Like, what would be what's the reason for that?
It's because when I think of stories, I think of the cool stuff that happens. I don't necessarily think of maybe how a character reacted to it. Like if I'm going to retell the plot of The Lord of the Rings,
right? I
will say, and then they went to the Mines of Moria. It was so cool. But why did they go to the Mines of Moria is a point that I might skip over.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's why things could happen, but I think that's probably what happened to me. I thought, oh, these scenes are really cool, but I just got to make up some BS to get to the scene.
Yeah.
But in reality, you got to have some sort of agency for them or motivation for them to do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be a reason for the story existing. And for, I started mine with mostly world building. I just was, I thought of a cool world. I thought of a cool premise. And then I kind of had to like find a story and characters to put in it. So I think that was part of it where it was just like I was matching characters to the world. So it's taken me quite a while to finally be like, okay, I feel like this is the direction to, that they all have to go.
But once you hit it though, you hit it and that's where you go. It's great. It's a great feeling to know once you finally get there.
Yeah, for sure. So what made you want to stick with the self-published route then? So you kind of talked about the querying.
Yeah.
Decided not to really do that. What made you stick with that?
So a couple reasons. One, I did get scared off by agents not typically wanting to go for a previously self-published work. And I know my work is a little different. I don't know what you would call it, to be honest with you, because it's a rewrite, sure, of something that was previously self-published and then unpublished. But if you were to put the two books side by side, you'd never be able to tell that one was rewritten from the other. The pen name is different. The title is different. Everything is different. Yeah. And plus, that first book from way back when I was 19, nobody knows it exists. Yeah. So if someone wanted to find it, I don't even know if they could. Right. Which, by the way, I bought all the copies off Amazon. You can no longer buy it.
Right.
So you can't get
it. There's not available.
It does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
But so that's part of the reason where I'm like, I don't want to go through this. Maybe I do land an agent. Maybe I do land a contract. And then someone finds the old book and says, this is a previously self-published work. Why didn't you disclose this?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to lie.
Yeah.
You know, because it was like, do I mark off on the form that it's previously self-published and then probably never get a call back?
Right.
Do I leave it unchecked and maybe I get an agent, but that means I lied to them? It's a really weird situation. But I will say, I did reach out to some small presses as well, not just agents. And most of them were pretty okay with it being, you know, a rewrite of like I explained my situation. They said, yeah, that seems okay. We would accept this. So I considered a small press too. Ultimately, I didn't go through with it. And it didn't work out at this point because I wanted to just release these really fast.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you know what? I want to get the series out. I want the story to be told. I'm going to start this in 2020. I'm going to get one book out every year. I'll finish by like 2025. Well, it's 2024 and only one of them's out. So it's clearly that didn't work out the way I envisioned it.
Yeah.
But that's the other reason why I want to, because I have other things I'd like to write as well instead of this, not instead of, after this series is done. But I'm a one story kind of guy, you know.
Yeah.
I don't float from work to work. I stay in one story, I stay in one series until it's finished. Or I throw it away. Whichever of the two comes first. But I'm not throwing this one away. The first one's out. I got to finish it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting to say that. I've heard some people I've heard a lot of things. Like some people are totally fine to jump between stuff. Others can never jump projects, even if it's in the same world. I'm kind of in the camp of like, I'm writing the main, like the first book, but then I always kind of jump and I'll, like, if I get stuck, I'll write a scene that's maybe like book 3 or something.
Oh, sure.
I may never use it, but it kind of like gets me unstuck on the thing that I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
I think I've done that too. Maybe not books. Like I didn't write a scene for book 3 when I was stuck somewhere in book 1, but I'll jump around a little bit. Maybe if I'm stuck or if I'm like, you know, I'd like to do some foreshadowing here, but I'm not quite sure what I'm foreshadowing yet. So maybe I should write that first.
Yeah.
And kind of go from there.
Well, I think if you have a strong outline too, that helps. You can do that a little more where you're like, well, I know I need to be here, so I'm going to go write that quick, and then maybe that'll help me get through this part.
Yeah. I mean, when I was, so full disclosure, so the first 3 books in this series are pretty much written. I just need to like do the publishing thing. Obviously, the first one's out. But those were books I had written when I was younger. They just needed the rewriting and all that. Book 4 is the one I never even drafted. And by that point, I had really perfected the outline.
Yeah.
Like, outlined it. Some people don't think this is fun at all. And I'm okay. And, you know, there's plotters, first pantsers, you know, that sort of thing. I would say I'm definitely a plantser. Do have a very long and, you know, meticulous outline, but I will deviate from it if the moment calls for it. But I know, like, okay, this is this chapter. These 3 things are what I want to accomplish in this chapter. And this is how I'd like it to end. Doesn't always work out that way. But once I perfected that sort of system, I never got stuck writing book 4 at all. It was stream of writing. I never had a day where I struggled for words.
Yeah.
It helped me write it very quickly, which you know, I am, I'm older now, right? I'm 33. I got a full-time job. I'm married. If anything helps me write quicker, I will do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm to the point now. It's like I to try to sneak in 15 minutes before bed or, you know, wake up a half hour early. But there's definitely no, like writing for 3 hours or anything like
Not
that.
anymore.
No. So speaking of along those lines, what do you do? I guess what's kind of your, whatever writing routine you have, how do you kind of go about do you like a certain kind of music? Do you use certain kind of tools? Like what's your writing routine like?
All right. People hate when I talk about this. So that's why I love talking about it, because I get so much hate for this. So I am boring and I use Microsoft Word to draft. I've always used Word. I've thought about trying Scrivener, but I'm like, you know, I've used Word for so long. It just kind of works for me. And I can't do this anymore because of how, my life has changed since I first started writing books. But I am a binge writing machine.
Mm.
Now, it helped that I lived alone for a while, but I would wake up in the morning about 7 a.m. and I would write for like 3 hours. I would, get ready, take a little break, have some lunch, write for 4 or 5 more hours, have my dinner, then write for 3 or 4 more hours before going to bed. On days that I was off from work, like weekends, or usually when I was writing a book, I'd take a week off. My strategy was take a week off work around Thanksgiving, so we get like some time off for, work provided time off for the holidays. Not a ton of family commitments. It's just like Thanksgiving Day. It's not like Christmas where I might have a lot of family commitments. Basically, strategic time off where I can be a total hermit. So days where I'm off, I wrote anywhere from 8 to 12,000 words a day.
Wow.
Days where I wasn't off from work, I'd log off from work and I would write 3 to 4,000 words before I went to bed. So I am a machine when I write books. For example, my 4th book, now it's not edited or anything. It might be edited down. Right now it's 150,000 words. I did that in about 6 weeks.
Wow. That's crazy.
The outline helps too, right?
Yeah.
If I didn't have that outline, I don't think I could write that many words a day.
Sure.
If I was just pantsing, I'd probably be doing half of that. But for me, it's all about discipline.
Yeah.
All about being disciplined in what I do, getting up at the same time, doing the same things. I'm very regimented, very routine oriented.
Yeah.
That's obviously all going to change now.
Yeah.
But back when I was writing this series, it worked. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And other people hate this too. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Some people swear by it. I read this on the internet. It wasn't my own idea. So some people do this. I actually write in Comic Sans.
Okay.
I don't know what it is about it. It makes it feel less serious. So it makes me write faster.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think whatever tool works,
Right? Yeah. Some people will be like, oh my God, Comic Sans, but it looks so ugly. And I'm like, well, you're right. Writing a death scene in Comic Sans, it changes the feeling a little bit. But for me, I already know the death's going to happen. I already know exactly what I'm going to write about. It's just getting the words on the paper. So whatever means necessary to do it, I will do it. Yeah. Aside from AI, I won't be doing that. Whatever means necessary in terms of me actually doing it myself. That's what I mean.
For sure. Yeah. Well, you're reminding me of, I don't know if you know who Jonathan Weiss is.
I do.
So he's publishing a book every like 5 months or something.
Yep.
And I was just blown away by that. I was like, that's craziness. Yeah. It's awesome.
It's amazing. Him, I mean, even if you want to go with guys like Brandon Sanderson too, who just, they can pump out books. And I mean, maybe if I didn't have a full-time job, I could write more books like they do, because I've developed some pretty good processes to write books fast.
Yeah.
My issue is going through the publishing process and that being very slow. Like getting cover art, getting it edited. I tend to take my time with edits. So that's really where I don't want to call it a roadblock because it's important, but that's where my roadblock to publishing quickly comes through. I take a long time to edit, and I take a long time to decide, what the back cover says or all the other stuff that goes into publishing. But now that I've done this first one, I have a good group of people for critiques, the beta reading, for arts. So now I probably have to spend less time searching for freelancers now that I have a solid core of people I can ask. But
having a good team that you've already kind of pre-vetted and know they're going to do a good job and all that is helpful for sure.
It's pretty important. I mean, if you're writing your first book, you're probably going to have to go through this process of finding, it's about finding what you like too, right? There's so many kinds of fantasy covers out there. I had to decide, do I want people on the cover? Do I want someone who's going to draw people? Do I want like a symbol on the cover? Is it an environment kind of cover? I had to decide that. Now, I didn't go with my cover, which I'll show it right here. I didn't go with this cover because I thought it was like the most popular thing at the time. I didn't really try to chase trends. It's just, I was browsing artists. And it's just the art style I fell in love with the most. The artist's name is Felix Ortiz. If you're in the indie sphere, you've probably heard of him. He does a lot of self-published fantasy covers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So, what keeps you motivated then to write? So you obviously have no issue getting the words out. So what kind of keeps you, is it like the itch in the back of your head that keeps you wanting to write?
Yeah, I think I just like telling stories. I think that's really the main part of it. This isn't my job, right? I'm not, I'm not making a paycheck from this, right? I got to work full time for that. So the books aren't paying bills. So why am I motivated to do it? I like telling stories, and I love when I get a review, if it's a review or someone messaging me saying, I really love the words you put down on paper in some whatever way they feel like saying it. I'm like, you know what? That feels awesome. I think at deep down, this sounds really weird. I like entertaining people, And for me, that way comes through words. And if people are entertained by what I write, if they find some sort of meaning in what I write, then I'm very happy. I find fulfillment through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Telling stories is, it's been how we've always communicated the best and taught each other about ourselves and learned things about who you are and all that's the same for me. I just love telling stories. I love reading stories. I love watching stories.
Yeah.
And
I think it's fun. I don't know. After all this time, I haven't written anything in a while, but I still think it's fun. And there's not a lot of better feelings than holding a book you published in your hands, right?
Right.
It feels pretty nice. It'll feel that it never gets old either. Like I just reordered a batch of author copies. I had run out, so I reordered a batch. The feeling of opening a box of a book you wrote, it never gets old. It really doesn't. It's really cool.
I always wonder if, like Brandon Sanderson or someone he's just putting out books. Like if he ever is like, well, there's another one,
There's another one.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't, but
I would love to hear that from the authors who have written, 100 books.
Yeah.
Like if you write your 102nd book, do you still get the same feeling as when you wrote your first or your second or your third? I don't know. I'd love to know. I'm not sure if I'll ever write 100 books. That's a lot. But if I ever get to that point, I'm wondering how I'll feel. I have no idea. Yeah. I guess we'll see I'll let you know when I get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to hear from a James Patterson or something of
right.
How he could, I don't know how many he's written, hundreds.
Tons. Yeah.
But it's does he, clearly it doesn't get old because he keeps writing them.
Keeps doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So what do you think about, so you kind of mentioned AI. I don't like going too much down the rabbit hole because people get real intense about it.
That they do.
Actually, here's a good question for you. So I just recently saw about the whole NaNoWriMo thing where they were kind of I don't know if they endorsed using AI, but they basically said that they're fine with it.
Yeah, I did see that.
What are your thoughts on all that?
I'm a little disappointed that was their stance on it. Am I up in arms, ready to take a torch to NaNoWriMo headquarters? No. But I am a little disappointed in their decision because it's obviously been a hot topic throughout the writing and all creative sphere for ever since the first iteration of ChatGPT or even a Midjourney came out all those years ago. And I just wish they had a stronger stance on endorsing human artists because I think that's the heart of it for me. By using AI, whether it's to write a paragraph or to generate a cover image, you're taking that away from a human who could have done that. And I think for me too, it's I would feel kind of cheated if I just wrote a book entirely of AI, or even if I used AI to write a couple paragraphs that I was stuck on. Because for me, I would go back and I'd look at the paragraph and I'd be like, I didn't write this. This was scraped from the internet somewhere. So yeah, I guess my stance on the NaNoWriMo thing is disappointment. I wasn't a huge NaNoWriMo participant. I kind of just write when I feel like it. So I've participated a couple times over the years. So I don't know if I'll participate again. Maybe not necessarily because of that decision, but if I were thinking of doing it this year, their decision on AI would give me pause to actually, go through their website and log my word count through them. Yeah, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Is the word for it.
I think, guys, just like anything, where if it can be used as a tool correctly, and I'll explain what I mean here,
Yeah.
then it's not a problem. And what I mean is, so for instance, one of the things I've been doing is I have a commute to work.
Yes.
So have been doing a lot of just, I turn on this app that I have that records me,
Mhm.
and I just talk notes. I just say things
Yeah.
I'm thinking, ideas, all that stuff, and it transcribes it and sends it in an email to
That's
me.
great. That
Yeah.
I think is a great use of AI.
Right.
Absolutely.
It doesn't create anything. It doesn't do
Nope.
it. Literally just helps me
Mhm.
take notes while I'm driving, essentially.
Totally. Yeah.
I've been experimenting a little with ChatGPT in this context, creating a custom GPT
Mm.
that the rules of it are that it's not allowed to create anything. It's not
Mhm.
allowed to suggest anything, have any ideas or anything.
Yeah.
But what it can do is basically help me reference things. So
Sure. Okay.
like I give it information about the story, and then I'm like, what, character, what color are this character's eyes?
Mm.
Like
Sure. Okay.
giving, so it's just basically like a reference guide
Yeah.
to, so that it's easier for me to pull information out,
Mhm.
but it's
Yeah.
not creating anything.
Yeah. See, that's where I draw the line too. If it's not creating something, I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
Because I think there are good uses of other kinds of AI. Like you mentioned your commute to work and saying notes. I mean, there's other things that people do in their jobs that are very manual and very difficult.
Mhm.
Automating, maybe things like data entry. I know we're getting way off topic from writing here, but stuff like that I think is an admirable use of AI.
Mhm.
I guess my stance on AI is when it starts, well, I think it's already started, costing creatives jobs is
Yeah.
when I start to put my foot down. I'm like, all right, nope, I am totally against this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'll admit when I first heard about Midjourney years ago, I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. But
Mhm.
then, things came out about AI in general, how it's scraping from works across the internet. And I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
justify using this. But yeah, AI is great in other contexts. I think your quote says it best. It's not creating something, then that's okay with me.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's, because the other thing, like you were saying about it,
Yeah.
if you wrote something with AI, you'd look back and be like, well, I didn't write this.
Yeah.
My thing is like, if you want to be a writer,
Mm-hmm.
why, like, if you just want to generate books with
Right?
AI, then like that's not being a writer. That's just,
Right.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
don't understand why you'd want to be like, I
Me
want to be a
neither.
writer and then just generate it with AI all the time.
Right. And it's not like writing books is a get rich quick scheme here. So
Right.
it's not going to help you make much money, that's for sure.
Right.
So I don't know. That's a good point too. I've thought about that. I was like, you say you want to write books, but then you have
Yeah.
a program do it for you? That
Right.
makes no sense to me, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, at the end of the day, I'm kind of like to each their own. Like if people are going to do it,
Yeah. They're
whatever.
going to
I
do
mean,
it.
but what I will say is I don't think we will ever get like a Lord of the Rings or a Harry Potter or like one of those big ones. We're
Mhm.
never going to get that from AI.
No.
Like that's got to
No.
come from a human.
No, I don't think so either. I know some people may think the opposite, like, no, if we keep letting AI scrape things, it's going to eventually get there. I don't think so. I'm actually of
Mhm.
the opinion of that AI is generated content's actually going to get worse and worse and worse because
Mm.
it'll keep scraping the same content. And then eventually, when everything is AI, it's going to start scraping AI. So it'll be AI scraping AI, which will make even worse AI. And then it's just going to be a mess. That's what I think is going to happen in the maybe not too distant future.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to Amber Toro.
Amber, yes, I
Yeah.
know Amber.
I talked to her a few months ago,
Yeah.
and she works in some AI. She
Yeah.
has some tech field.
Yeah.
And she said that basically that of AI right now is generating things based off of what humans have already created. So
Mhm.
she was like, eventually, if we aren't putting new stuff into the system,
Mhm.
then it's not gonna innovate
Right. It's
ever,
just gonna stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people who use a lot of AI, and if AI becomes the norm at like if the if companies start eliminating creative jobs, they're gonna start seeing their own content being scraped by AI that was
Yeah.
already written by AI. And they're gonna wonder why their conversions
Gonna
are
be a
down.
big old loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's how I always like asking people, and
Yeah.
I get all sorts of comments and
Of
people are up
course.
in arms about it. And I'm like, I just find it interesting to see where people are and stuff.
Yeah, me too. I'm not gonna like go out of my way to vilify someone for using it. I'll never
Sure.
call someone out on the internet for saying so, for like for saying that they use it, whatever. I'm not gonna do that. But I know
Mhm.
in my personal life, my writing life, I'm never gonna use AI to write a book, never
Mhm.
gonna use AI to make a cover, anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's my stance on it, and that's what I'll keep doing.
Yeah, for sure. You're written for the fourth book.
That's right.
So, what projects are you thinking about next after you finish this one up?
Yeah, so I gotta get book 2 out. I gotta get that published.
Mhm.
So, like I said earlier, my publishing process just takes a long time. So, I mean, that book hasn't even gotten to beta readers yet. It's not really at that stage right now.
Mhm.
Ever since I rewrote the second one, I did a similar thing to what I did for the first one, right? Just total
Yeah.
rewrite of it, slashed a whole bunch of stuff, whatever. But since I did that, I did another major, that's when I did my major revisions to the first book. So
Mhm.
now I got to go to the second book and say, okay, what did I change in the first book that's now going to affect this one? What
Right.
scenes did I include in book 1 that were originally in book 2? Because I did a little bit of that too.
Mhm.
I pulled some scenes from other books to use in book 1, so because I wanted to establish an epic feeling world.
Mhm.
So I just pulled some scenes from those other books too. So now I have to go back and see, okay, what did I change here? What did I change here? How does this affect this? I feel like there's some plot lines that are going to be revamped in book
Mhm.
2 just based on what I did in book 1 for for the better, right? It'll make the book better. It's
Yeah.
just more work on my part to get it done.
Yeah.
After that, it'll be book 3 is going to get the same treatment
Mhm.
as book 2, and after that, finally, I will go back to the draft I wrote of book 4 back in 2020, and I will finish the series that way.
Mhm.
um I have a couple other ideas of what I'm going to do post. The series is called Echoes of Oniro, the post Echoes of Oniro. Nothing has been written down, nothing's really been substantiated, but my only thought is I want to write something like really weird.
Mhm.
So, Fogbound, Echoes of Oniro, that series, it's very it's an epic fantasy. You're going to get what you typically get from an epic fantasy. And it's
Right.
pretty grounded in reality. Obviously, there's magic and stuff, but there isn't an overt abundance of absurdity or weirdness.
Right.
Right. So I think my next one, I want to try and write something kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
Just go all totally off the
yeah,
wall with it.
that's right. That's right. Have these ridiculous creatures with lots of limbs,
Mhm.
have this ridiculous magic. I'm not thinking it's going to be lit RPG, but it
Mhm.
might have some lit RPG elements to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we'll see where that idea goes. But that, I think I would like to have my next project after Echoes of Oniro is done. Something
Yeah.
weird, something kind of wacky.
Yeah. I feel like Sanderson's starting to do some of that in his work where like he's
Mm-hmm.
starting to see how far he can push the readers.
Right,
Like
exactly.
I've thought that with Tress of the Emerald Sea with like the Spore Ocean and stuff where I was just like
Mm-hmm.
he's just keep pushing the
That's right.
boundary of like how
That's it.
weird can we make it?
That's the kind of stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
An ocean of mushrooms. Beautiful. That's exactly that's the kind of stuff I want to write in the next one. Just weird. And I
Yeah.
just want to, maybe I'll hate it when I write it. Maybe I'll throw it out, but I just want to see what I can cook up.
Yeah. Really push the creativity and the bounds
That's
of
right.
that for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so here's a thought.
Ooh, okay.
How what are your biggest challenges? So we talked about how you draft fast.
Mhm.
You really draft fast. What are some
Yeah.
what's something your challenges you as a writer where you're like, this is not the thing that I'm good at doing?
Yeah. So I am not the best at environmental descriptions.
Mm.
That's always been more difficult for me. My prose has greatly improved even since Fogbound. My prose has greatly improved. When the second book comes out, readers will notice an improvement in the prose there. Not that the prose in Fogbound is bad by any means, but we like to improve as writers, and I think my prose has gotten much better.
Yeah.
I've always had strong character work. Once I mastered the whole agency thing,
Yeah.
I think I do very good character work, and I think the world building and how I introduce concepts, things like that, I think is pretty well done. I've never been accused of an info dump, and I've never been accused of actually, you know what I'll say is I got a review somewhat recently that really applauded the way I went about the world building.
Yeah.
And they got it. They picked up what I was putting down of what I was trying to do. Like, I live by sort of an iceberg approach, a little drip drip. You know, the deeper you go, more stuff you'll find, but it might take a little while to get there. I'm not just going to dump a whole bunch of stuff on you. That's what I do well. But man, those trees, those bushes, walking from one place to another, that's always been a struggle for me. And that's partly why book 2 is the way it is. So book 1 has a pretty good mix of adventure, battles, political intrigue, that sort of stuff. Book 2 is a lot more action adventure than it is war and politics. And for that, it sort of lends itself more to these descriptions, to walking here from there, to crafting these intricately looking places. Because book 2 takes place somewhere that's markedly different than book 1 did. So that's one more of a test for me to see like how much I've improved at that. Because I do think it's I shouldn't say the one place. It's a place that I do need to improve as a writer. But hey, you know, if the first book was written perfectly, I'd never have anything to work for, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I'd say that's my challenge for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember when I first handed off some of my writing to people, and my brother I mentioned before, he was like, "Your fight scenes are great. Like, I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I can see it. It's very vivid. It flows really well. But your people don't know how to speak. Like, the dialogue is horrible." It's like,
it's funny.
Like, he was like, "Have you ever had a conversation in your life?" And I was like, "Yeah,
hey, man.
I just, you know." That's just always love like it. Having a flowing conversation is just really hard for me in writing.
You know what? I think that's another thing too that maybe people might take for granted. Good dialogue work. Good dialogue work is not easy. It's hard to make a conversation in a book sound authentic, that people would actually say. That's something I did a lot of research on in my rewrite, on how to make the dialogue better. I think I did a good job. Obviously, there's ways I can improve with it. I think I did a good job with it in Fogbound, but it's definitely something that every writer needs to practice. I don't think it comes naturally, that dialogue writing. It's very difficult. But I love how, you know what? You had mentioned something, and I was going to say how much I love it. The thought just escaped me. Man, it's gone. Right. Maybe it'll come back. It's fine, but it escaped me just now. It's fine. We'll move on.
I just think I think part of it is I overthink it. Like because I'm trying to think, how would people have this conversation?
Yeah.
But then you like overthink it, and if I would just write it, then it would work out.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. I thought of it. Fight scenes.
Yeah.
Fight scenes are so interesting. For me, when I was younger, you know, my 19-year-old self loved writing fight scenes. Basically, the entire point of the plot was to get to the fight scenes. And I think that's the one thing I really excelled at when I was that age.
Yeah.
33-year-old Nick, he doesn't want to write the fight scenes.
Right.
He cares more about the dialogue scenes, the drama scenes, the intrigue scenes, more so than the fight scenes. That, I think, I didn't expect that. I was like, fight scenes are awesome, right?
Right.
You know, you watch Lord of the Rings movies, you know, you think of the Battle of Helm's Deep. Fight scenes are awesome, but it's really weird how that sort of flipped for me as a writer, where now I'm so much more invested in writing those one-on-one intimate character moments rather than the fight scenes. So I don't know. I don't know where that change took place. Somewhere between me, like 25-year-old me and 30-year-old me. I think that a switch was flipped, but you would notice in no one's ever going to do this. If you were to read the horrible book I wrote when I was 19 compared to Fogbound, you'll notice that despite the word count getting larger, the fight scenes actually decreased.
Yeah.
Because I just thought the other parts were more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has to do with as you get older, you just get more like I'm kind of the same, where like I still love writing a good fight scene.
Yeah, of course.
But I definitely I'm writing more now for like for the moments for people to understand what the story's actually about.
Yeah.
And those don't really happen in the fight scenes. You know, they happen like in the character moments and some of the world building moments, but like that I'm writing to communicate that bigger theme. You know what I mean?
Totally get that.
Yeah. Well, we're pushing an hour here. It's been great talking to you. And so I always like to end with this. What are, if you had two or three kind of big pieces of advice for maybe a new author or someone who's just starting self-publishing, maybe they finished a draft and now they don't know where to go from there.
Mhm.
What are kind of those two or three pieces of advice that you would give to them?
All right. Well, the obvious one is don't fall victim to a vanity press. Don't do that. Definitely don't do that one. So that's number one. Number two, I would say if you haven't written a draft yet, get a regimen. Like figure out how you're going to write it. For me, discipline works. I mean, obviously, it may not work for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, establishing a routine, establishing when you're going to write, when you're going to do other things, I think is really important to finishing that draft. And number three, this might be the most important one. Community. Get involved in the indie sphere, whether that's on Bookstagram, Book Talk, which is not something I'm on. Maybe I should. Instagram, Book Talk, Twitter or X, whatever, Threads. There's indie author, indie writer communities everywhere. Find a circle. You'll find your critique partners there. You'll find your beta readers. I mean, I found awesome people to work with, from beta readers to artists to everything, really, just from being a part of these communities. It also makes you feel a lot better when you try to hire like a freelancer or something, because they're in the community. People recommend them. I think if you're going to be an indie writer, because writing is such a solitary activity, you got to push yourself to join a community, to interact with folks. Make friends in the indie author community. It's a welcoming space, as long as you're not a total dick, obviously.
Sure.
It's a welcoming space.
Yeah.
People will support you. I can't recommend it enough to find a community and to find good people.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said it a few times on here, but I jumping into this podcasting thing and meeting all the people that I've met, like everyone is so supportive, and I've not met one person who isn't just like gunning for everybody.
Absolutely. There is no competition.
Yep.
No competition among indie writers. You see how many books people buy? People buy like 30 at once at the store. There's no competition. Your fellow indies, even if they write your same genre, they're not your competition.
Yeah.
That's how I like to think of it. They're your friends, and they will if you support them, they may support you. Don't do it for the purposes of getting reciprocation. Obviously, you got to be genuine, but just do that. Be genuine, make your friends, support people, lift others up.
Yeah.
And make the community, and just be a part of the community. I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, this has been awesome. Love having you on. We'll definitely do it again when you get your other books out and stuff.
That's awesome.
So why don't you tell us, where can we find all your stuff? Where can we connect with you?
Sure. So my handle on pretty much every social media is at Nick_A_writes. Instagram, Twitter, Threads, everywhere on the same handle. My website is njalexander.com. You can find my book Fogbounds, really wherever you would like to buy your books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, website, of course. Good, all that sort of stuff. And why you should follow me? I maybe not posting a lot of book updates lately, but I do post a lot of photos of a really cute dog named Lucy. So definitely follow me for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Sounds great. We'll put all that stuff down below. And thanks everyone for watching. This has been NJ Alexander. Go check out his book, Fogbound, and get that, support him. And we will see you next time on Writing Quest.